Shall I start?
Okay. Try to and put out.
Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So we will be discussing the great master today. In our previous class, we saw that Swami Shardananji is trying to discuss some of the essential aspects of sadhana. Because even before we discuss Sri Ramakrishna's sadhak bhava, means Sri Ramakrishna as a sadhaka. In all the previous, most of the incarnations, very little of their sadhana is discussed in their biographies. Because they might have done it in secret, or they might have gone to the top of some hill, as Jesus says. And in the case of other incarnations as well, you will find that most of the incarnations, their guru bhav, or maybe their role as a master of their disciples, training of disciples, that is given more importance. So very often, in the case of most of the incarnations, you will find that very little importance is given to the sadhana part of the incarnation. So before even we discuss what sadhana is, what Sri Ramakrishna sadhana was, one should know what actually is spiritual practice. So the question that arose, or maybe the point that was discussed, was that one of the main goals of sadhana is to remove the delusion or ignorance which does not enable us to see reality. So the question is, what is the cause of that delusion? We discussed that. And when did it come to us? Why did delusion come in the first place? Why did we become ignorant? And then we spend all our life to remove that ignorance. So where did it come? Now, Swami Shardananji answers, the very cause of this delusion is ignorance. Just as it is in all other situations in life. Whenever we are ignorant of certain things, we make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, there is a delusion first. And because of that delusion, we make mistakes. So there is no point in discussing when did this ignorance come. Because we are ignorant, delusion happens. And the goal of a sadhaka is to remove this ignorance. As Buddha once said, if somebody is hit by an arrow, you don't try to find out who hit the arrow. First, you try to remove that arrow from your body and try to dress the wound and save that person. That is more important than finding out who has hit the arrow and who is the culprit. That can be inquired later, or it's not very important, because the first primary thing one has to do is to save one's life. So through this example, Buddha said, don't bother about when did this delusion come. Don't bother about what is the role of God in this. Why does he create delusion in some people and some people are wise? So all these aspects should not form a matter for discussion, unnecessary discussion, because it's not going to solve our problem. Our problem is how to get rid of suffering, and that suffering or ignorance the delusion is because of ignorance, and because of delusion there is suffering. So we discussed this point. Then the question was, how does one get rid of ignorance? Swami Shraddhanand says, obviously we must eradicate this ignorance. And then he says, the history of spiritual personality show that they have in their life got rid of this ignorance, they have become enlightened, they have attained peace, and they have left instructions how to do it. Now, today we will see how Swami Shraddhanand takes the place of a questionnaire, a person who asks some further questions. He says, many people may argue that so many people, ordinary people, see and experience the world the way everyone else experiences them. But only a few sages have seen the truth or have realized the truth. So if majority, how can you say the majority of people are wrong, and why not consider these prophets, these great saints and sages to be wrong? Because they are in minority. Only a few people has realized. It may be that their perceptions are wrong. Their ideal of life is wrong. In fact, that's what Charvakas believed. They just said, don't bother about, just eat, drink, and be merry. If necessary, even rob, cheat, steal, because they did not believe in karma. They said the best philosophy is to make the most out of life, ethically or unethically. They said, who's going to bother? Once you die, everything is reduced to ashes. And that was the dangerous Charvaka philosophy which prevailed in India, because they said, can we not see many of the selfish people seem to be enjoying life? A lot of evil people, in fact. So this Charvaka philosophy believed in this truth. So based on that, now Swami Shraddhanand is asking this question, that maybe the people, the majority of the people who are whom the sages say suffer because of their ignorance, maybe they suffer, but they also enjoy. They also enjoy whatever be the means. And then everybody has to die. The good person also has to die. The evil person also has to die. So why bother about morality, ethics, spirituality and all? Maybe the few people who are preaching, who teach religion or who are called as prophets and saints, maybe their perceptions may be wrong. They may be wrong. Why only a few sages have experienced that reality? Could it be that their perceptions are wrong? So Swami Shraddhanand answers, he says, there is no rule which says that what most people believe is always true. We all know, he says, that the sages' direct experiences were true, because in that knowledge of nirvana, as Buddha says, or moksha, as Shankaracharya and other prophets of Hinduism say, or being one with the Father in heaven, as the Christians say, as Jesus said, we could see some characteristics in them which everybody wants but are not able to attain. The first, he says, they become free from misery. No misery troubles them. No matter how convincingly a Charvaka may say, when he suffers, he will forget all the philosophy that he believed in. He has to find out a way to get rid of suffering. Nobody can say, I will not suffer. Even the most evil-minded person who is very shrewd and clever and knows how to manipulate and get things done, even he has to suffer someday or the other. And it's not just life after death, or maybe the life after in which he suffers. He may suffer in this life itself. Nobody is free from suffering. That's why Buddha said, if you observe carefully, everything is full of suffering. So how to get rid of suffering? If you had not got rid of suffering, you would not have claimed that. So the other thing that happens is one becomes utterly fearless. and also full of peace, eternal peace. Otherwise, Christ uh, would have been worried a lot when he was being crucified. He never showed any signs of peacelessness. He was so calm, and he could detach himself from all kinds of suffering, the horrible suffering of crucifixion, and even asked people to forgive the people who were killing him because they were following the orders of the king. He said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." How could Jesus say that? How could these great prophets be so fearless, have eternal peace, and feel no misery at all? How do they attain that state? They were not acting, or they were not presuming, or they were not pretending to be full of peace, full of completely fearless. So if we observe this few people who have realized and shown us the way to realization, Shardanji says, all the ultimate purpose of life they found was to attain immortality while one is living. Otherwise, everything ends with death. All the hard, when all the wealth that is gotten through hard work or through so much suffering, everything has to be left behind. That prospect makes a person so fearful. When death approaches, he becomes miserable. No, everybody has that experience. There are no exceptions to that. That's what Buddha saw. He saw an old man, he saw a sick man, and he saw a dead man. Old man, sick man, and dead man. And when he saw that for the first time, he saw what misery was. Till then, his father was very careful not to show him any kind of misery and was trying to paint a picture that life is so beautiful, you just enjoy. He felt that if he sees misery, he may renounce, as some of the astrologers had told his father, that he may renounce the world in search of peace. So don't show him misery. But how long? One day, when he went to his kingdom, he could see these truths. So there's no point in hiding these truths, either from our children or when they grow up. We can paint a very rosy picture of life and say that life has no conflicts, don't worry. We avoid conflicts and see that children are not exposed to conflicts. But someday or the other, they have to face the inevitable. They have to face sickness, they have to face old age, they have to face death, the prospect of death, the fear of death. So all these things Buddha analyzed and said that if this is not misery, what else is misery? I don't want to lead this kind of life. So he renounced the world, went in search of peace and nirvana, or something that will get rid of all this misery. So some of the qualities these great prophets or saints exhibit, Shardanji says, they are forbearance, contentment. As Holy Mother said, Santosh is something which is so difficult. Santosha means contentment. A man is never content, and this discontentment makes him suffer. He may be having some wealth which is more than enough for him. He is not going to even spend it in his whole life, but still he's discontent. He wants to earn more and more, and finally somebody else enjoys that wealth. Maybe his evil son, or maybe some evil grandson, or some distant relative who will simply inherit that wealth which he has worked so hard to earn or to get. And finally, when death approaches, he feels misery just with the prospect of living behind all these things which he has worked so hard. He hardly gets time to enjoy what he has really earned, because most of his life he has spent in earning money and earning wealth, creating property and all those things. So contentment is a big virtue. It's very rare. And if a person is not content, no matter how rich he is always miserable. He is not happy. He sees his neighbor and he's not even able to enjoy his wealth. That worry, that anxiety that I am poorer than somebody else or I have less wealth, that competitive nature robs him of contentment. That is why Holy Mother once said, the greatest virtue in a human being is contentment or santosh. So if we see qualities like forbearance, not being affected by pleasure or pain, as the Gita says, and compassion, humility, and all the noble qualities, they are very common with the spiritual people, no matter which tradition they belong to. If somebody says that such and such a person, a historical person, or maybe in ancient ages was a great saint, was a great realized person who had removed all ignorance from his life, then if we compare, then we see all these qualities like forbearance, contentment, compassion, humility, and all the noble qualities are seen in them. And it also makes that person universal. He doesn't have narrow ideas, he doesn't hate, or even if it differs from somebody, he doesn't make a big fuss about it. He is very Catholic in his approach, he is very liberal. So the scriptures make a list, whether it is the Jewish scriptures or Christian scriptures or Hindu scriptures, you will find these extraordinary qualities are common property of every human being, no matter which culture, which tradition he belongs to. So all those who attain perfection or who manage to remove ignorance from their lives, they follow the footsteps of these great fathers or these great saints. Now, the next question is very important. It's a very important question in Vedanta. He says, though the same delusion may be seen by many, that does not make it true. The question is, well, how is it that all of us experience the same delusion? If you think that some people or a majority of the people are under some kind of ignorance and delusion, then how can all of us see the same, make the same mistake? Why do people not learn from others' mistakes? That's a very important question. As Yudhishthira once was asked, a divine voice came in the forest, all his brothers had died, drinking the water from a pond. And there was a spirit there who said, if you answer all my questions, then all your brothers and your wife will be revived. They had drunk water from that and they had died. So Yudhishthira had no option. He was the eldest of the Pandavas. So he said, okay, you asked me. So he said, what is the greatest surprise, the most surprising thing in life? It's part of Mahabharata. So he was supposed to answer this question. And then he gives the right answer. He says the most surprising thing is so many people make so many mistakes. And the biggest among all the mistakes is we see a lot of people dying. May not be on the same day. We know that someday or the other everybody dies and everybody has to die in the future. But yet it does not worry us. We don't even try to solve the problem of death. We don't try for immortality. He says that is the greatest surprise. We somehow get a feeling that we are not going to die. At least we are not going to die tomorrow or maybe immediately. Everybody seems to be careless about this fact. So Yudhishthira says, seeing everyone every day, somebody or the other dying, either directly or indirectly, we don't learn a lesson and even try to find out if there is something which can make us immortal. We don't like death, nobody likes death, but somehow due to ignorance or due to delusion, he says, everybody thinks he is going to live. So that is why he says that so many people, how can they commit the same mistake? So that is the mystery of life. So Swami Shardananji says that cannot be a good argument, because if a majority of people had learned from their mistakes, then the world would have been a very happy place. For example, Duryodhana, when after the war he was about to die, he blames Krishna. He says, we had the same teacher, Pandavas and the Kauravas, and we were taught the same ethics, same morality. I know what is good, but I cannot follow it. I know what is bad, but I cannot avoid it. So it's not that everybody is ignorance. The fact that many people, though they see how others suffer due to ignorance, they themselves commit the same mistakes. So Sardanji says, just by seeing once or just by listening to what ignorance is, people will not become wise, or people will not go after eternal peace, eternal life. They will somehow convince themselves that at least I am not going to die immediately. So there is no hurry. Let me make merry and one day, but suddenly something may happen and one can die. But man is not worried about it. That's why Yudhishthira said, this is one of the greatest surprises or greatest things which you can see, that every day people are dying, but still people think that they will live. So the fact that many people are under delusion, a majority of people believe in delusion, doesn't make the fact true. Because we observe in our day-to-day life, so many times we know the bad effects of cheating or robbing. Do you think the robber doesn't know that if he's caught, he's going to be jailed? And criminals definitely know it, but still they go on committing crimes. What's the reason? So this delusion is not such an easy thing to get rid of. And he says there is in Hindu philosophy a theory that there is a cosmic mind. Each one of our minds are connected to each other. It has been proved, physics has proved that anything, any atom, for example, Swamiji says, can drag the whole universe with it. The weak forces, the strong forces, all the forces, no object can be independent in this universe. If you see the fundamental laws of quantum physics. So anything that happens in one part of the universe affects the other part. If some country becomes rich, it is at the cost of some other country who has to become poor. So our minds are part of they call it Mahat, the universal mind. Our minds are it's nothing but some kind of energy, thought energy. Just as we have heat energy, you heat one portion of the room and the energy spreads all over and the whole room gets heated. So also the thoughts, this is what Swami Shardanji says, our thoughts definitely influence other thoughts. And since majority of the people are ignorant, the chances are more that anybody becomes ignorant rather than wise, because there is always a minority of people who are wise. Most of the people make the same mistake. So he says this, being part of the cosmic mind, we make mistakes again and again by the influence of the company that we keep, the outer environment where we live. So no matter how much wisdom is given, still we succumb to temptation, still we make mistakes. Not because we want to make them, but because we are helpless. We are part of a cosmic mind which is always dragging us down. So, So Sri Ramakrishna says, or Swami Shardanji says, that when you come to spiritual life, you can't have this rule of majority and minority, because less number of people are trying to. It's always a creative minority in every institution, in every, even in secular field. You will find only a few people succeed. All don't succeed. What's the reason? And we call them creative minority. They have special talents. They have special qualities which a majority of the people don't have. That makes them stand apart from the rest of the people. So also in spirituality, it says just because only a few people have succeeded, that doesn't mean it is not true. Because others, a majority of the people can't work hard, that doesn't mean that because a few people get Nobel Prize in some secular field, in some secular research, doesn't mean that all others should get. They need not get. All others can be mediocre. Only a few will be having that kind of special quality, noble quality. So the minority, majority, you can't simply go by majority. If majority are making mistakes, should I also make the same mistake? Even if 2 or 3 people show us the way, we would like to convince ourselves, convince our children that go after that small minority who are successful. Try to become Nobel laureates. You may not succeed, but keep that as an ideal. Just because everybody fails, everybody becomes ordinary. So what is the harm? I should be on the side of these ordinary people. Nobody says that. Everybody tries to become extraordinary or specially talented, even in secular field. So also in spirituality, it says the argument that a majority of people are worldly doesn't mean that giving up worldliness should not be the goal of your life. Maybe only a few of them. That is why they say spiritual life is so rare. In Gita, it is said, out of thousands, a few may attempt to attain to spirituality. And out of that few, only a few succeed. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. For siddhi or for spiritual development, thousands and thousands may come and try to attain religion, try to attain spirituality. Out of that, many may come. Out of millions, a few may come, thousands may come, but even from those thousands, only a few succeed. So, Swami Shardanji says, if you give that argument, I'll follow the path of the majority of people. It's not like democracy, the majority always wins. It may be true. So the same rule can be applied to politics also. If the majority of the people are bad, then it's natural that they will elect a bad leader, because they don't understand who is good, what is bad. So if a majority of the people are ignorant, doesn't mean that those who remove their ignorance and those who work hard and attain to spirituality should not be followed. Whether you attain it or not, at least an attempt should be made. So that is another argument. Now, the next important point, the 7th point, which Swami Shardanji discusses, that in Sankhya philosophy, in Hindu philosophy, there are 2 entities. One is Prakriti, nature, and another is Purusha. From the standpoint of all the scriptures in the world, what is known as spirit and what is known as the world or the material world, we call it Prakriti. So, Swami Shardanji says that there is an idea in the cosmic mind or Mahat. In India, we call it Ishvara. Ishvara is one who has an understanding or is the sum total of all the minds. Just as we have the sum total of all materials makes the material universe, sum total of all the thoughts, of all the minds, of all the thoughts that are there, that is known as the cosmic mind or Mahat. So, in the cosmic mind, he says, all these ideas of ignorance, of mukti, moksha, they were always there. It's not that it came into existence only when the Bible was created. That was the first scripture, or before that there was ignorance. Only this path will take you to the kingdom of heaven or the ultimate reality. That is not true. In the cosmic mind, this idea was always there. But when certain people, through their own life, they demonstrated the truth in their own way, they all pointed to the same cosmic mind, the sum total of all minds, which is beyond time, space, and causation. And that is known as the spirit or Purusha. And the goal is to reach that consciousness, because as long as space, time, and causation is there, there will be pain, there will be pleasure, there will be misery, there will be some bits of happiness. And that painful experiences that we have, which is known as misery, Buddha said, it is because of this changing nature of the universe. So, to give you a very simple example, everybody would like to have, say, as a target of wealth. And he would not definitely like the wealth to be reduced, to be diminished, or to lose it. He wants it to be eternal. But that is the nature of wealth. It cannot remain eternal. It is changing by its very nature. So everything, even his body, he would like that the body is always healthy, always young. I never become old. But no matter how much he tries, Prakriti or Mother Nature has this transformative character. It changes. Something is born, something grows, and something dies. Srishti, Sthiti, Pralay, that is what they say. So he says the time, space, and causation, which is responsible for this world, by its very nature, because it is transitory, because it is temporary, when we lose it, we become miserable. We don't like to lose wealth, we don't like to lose our health, we don't like to lose our reputation. Whenever we hold on to these temporary things, which by their very nature will be transformed and will be lost. We want to hold on to our youth. We will apply all sorts of cream to make the face look young, but age will catch up someday or the other. You can't eternally prolong, and that is when misery comes. When you don't want things to change, when you don't want to lose things, when you don't want to grow old, when you don't want to die. But when these things are inevitable, so that is why they say Prakriti, whatever happens in Prakriti is of a changing nature. And because it changes, sometimes it changes fast, sometimes it changes slowly. That's why we don't urgently, like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, every day when the sun set, we don't even bother. So many years, every time birthday comes, we think we don't realize that we have lost 1 year of our life. Everybody wants to celebrate the birthday by saying that we have grown, this is our age now. But when you grow old, you're not so enthusiastic about your birthdays, because every year reminds you that there is 1 year less for you to live. So this transitory nature does not bother us till we have that fear of the thing being snatched away from us. So that is the nature of Prakriti, which fools us, which makes us fall a prey to our ignorance. So spirituality has been defined as holding on to the spirit or purusha, which never changes. By definition, the spirit never changes. The changes are subject to the body. That is why when Jesus was crucified, he knew that which would have died after a few years is dying now. But I have realized the spirit, I have realized the kingdom of God, I have got nirvana. So, what does it really matter if the body lasts for another 10 years or 15 years? So, they are not attached because they know no matter how nicely we live, how many medicines we take, how much nutritious food we consume, something or that changing nature will catch up with us. And Prakriti will reduce everything to dust. Everything will end with death. So Swami Vivekananda once trying to explain Maya, he quoted the Shakespeare's famous verse in Hamlet that all this world is just sound and fury and everything ends with death. So a pessimistic person sees that this whole world, it's not just, it's all sound and fury which is going on, and ultimately the end will be death. Now, with a little calm reflection, Swami Shardananji says he is trying to explain what spirituality is. It has nothing to do with puja rituals. They are all just kindergarten of religion. He is trying to explain what sadhana is. If by our ritual, by our puja, by our whatever little things we do in the name of religion, if we don't want it to be converted into a superstition, then we have to understand the essential. That anything within the realm of Prakriti is just materialism. The only permanent thing that does not go away, that eternally remains with us, if we identify with that, is the Purusha, is the spirit, or whether you call it God. So when you talk of God or talk of reality, Buddhism doesn't talk about God because Buddha said we don't need to have a God. If we just call it reality, if we just call it freedom, if we call it the spirit, as we find people when they listen to Jesus, he spoke of the kingdom of God or the kingdom of the spirit. So that was a reality which he knew would never change. So the kingdom of God, which is defined as the kingdom of the spirit, never changes. So what changes is the world. What changes is Prakriti. So we have to be very careful when we deal with the world that the whole sadhana or spiritual practice, you should remember that Swami Shardanji is trying to explain the concept of sadhana. Then we can discuss what sadhana Sri Ramakrishna did. To understand that also, we need to know what sadhana is. To separate the spirit from the material world, from Prakriti, to separate the Purusha from Prakriti. That is what Sankhya says. Sankhya says yoga is nothing but viyoga. Viyoga means to separate. We are eternally mixing up one with the other and then becoming miserable. We hold on to these temporary things thinking that they are eternal, thinking that they will give us lifelong security, money, wealth, health, and all those things. But when it fails, when it goes away, we just find that we had placed our, we thought that these things were secure, but it is not able to give us security. All the money in the world cannot save us if we fall ill. If health goes, wealth, health, and all these transitory things, as soon they come, if you work hard, they come, but they go away also. Nothing is eternal in that. So the whole of yoga, the real yoga, not the yoga that we practice or that is more popular now, the physical yoga, which has nothing to do with the true yoga, is nothing but, according to Patanjali, this Viyoga. Viyoga means somehow convince the mind that it is the Purusha that is our true nature, not the Prakriti. And he says the role of yoga or sadhana is to convince yourself. It's every religion is for one's own self. So it is the goal of religion is to understand that you are a spirit, and until we do that, whether you call it Atman, whether you call it soul, whether you call it spirit, whether you call it the kingdom of God, whether you call it moksha, mukti, and so many different names of the same truth, the same eternal truth, holding on to which alone gives you eternal peace, eternal contentment, and you go beyond time, space, and causation. So what happens to Prakriti if it is separate? Doesn't impact you. Swami Vivekananda used to give a wonderful example. He says, suppose somebody is watching a movie. All the changes, and the images that he sees on the screen creates an impression that something is going on, some action is going on. And the person who is watching the movie may also get completely involved. If he sees a ghost, he may be full of fear. But if he is watching that movie as a sakshi, as a witness, he says, why should I bother? Because that's after all a movie. That's something moving on the screen. It has nothing to do with reality. Similarly, a witness attitude, one who is one with the Purusha, he sees the panorama of Prakriti play before him. He sees so many things are happening and he is not moved by anyone. He just has a neutral person. When he watches a movie, he really enjoys it because it's just on the screen. He knows in the heart of his heart, after all, it's a movie. It's going to end after 3 hours. I don't have to take this thing very seriously. With that attitude, with a completely detached attitude, when we go and see a movie, then we really enjoy it. But if you cry when the actors are crying, if you get moved, then you become miserable. When you see misery, you become happy when. So it is like getting involved. So not getting involved in Prakriti, he says, is the ultimate goal of spiritual life. That Brahman is real, Purusha is real, and the Prakriti, though it is appears to be real, it is of a temporary nature. And it doesn't require a wise scholar to tell you that that which is permanent always makes you happy. Everybody wants permanent peace, permanent security, permanent happiness. Nobody wants bits and pieces. If somebody tells you, I will give you happiness for about 15 minutes, then there will be 1 hour of misery. Then again, you will get some happiness. You feel restless because you want to be always happy. And all the struggle that we do in Prakriti is for this happiness, though we do it unknowingly, not knowing that this is not going to give us happiness. So here, he says a sadhaka has to be first convinced that only in the eternal, only in that which is permanent, there is true happiness. Everything that is transitory will today or tomorrow give rise to misery. So, now what does sadhana do? This is the 8th point. He says the main purpose of sadhana is to know the cause of the world, which is beyond space and time. We are not happy just to watch a movie. We want to know who has made this movie, who created this movie, who are the actors. So we just don't take the thing that we see in front of us for granted. Our curiosity will make us try to find out, is there any cause behind the world? Is there something which does not change? Because we don't like to be part of the change. We just want to extricate ourselves. Like you find there are many times in organizations, in social groups, you'll find there is a lot of controversy and a lot of fights going on. A wise person will slowly withdraw from that quarrel. He says, why should I bother myself? Let me be at peace. So those who really want peace, they don't get involved. They detach themselves. So also in the spiritual world, our conception, unfortunately, our habits rather than our conceptions. We may have conceptions of Brahman, we may have conceptions of God, we may have conceptions of saints, but still we don't follow it. Duryodhana told Krishna that I know what dharma is. You tell me, you don't have to tell me because my Guru has already taught us. The same Guru who taught Kauravas taught the Pandavas also. So he says, I know what is dharma, but somehow I can't follow it. So Shardanji says it is just because of habit. I know smoking is wrong. Smoking is harmful for health. But I can't stop because it has become a habit. I have allowed it to become a habit. So also with all the problems in nature. In the present form, our life is full of old habits. The technical name given for old habits is samskara. So no matter how much we listen or we get convinced intellectually that these habits are wrong, still we succumb to that. Why? Because of the impressions that have been created by repeated habits. So that is why what is sadhana is to undo the habits. We have made a habit of now and then making mistakes and holding on to the unreal. So now we have to make a habit. So japa, prayer, all these things are nothing but counter habits. So that is the reason why we do sadhana. We don't do sadhana because I am a Hindu, I am supposed to pray, or because I am a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day, not knowing why I do it. All these things were designed in such a way that you have to get rid of ignorance, and for that you have to get rid of the old habits. It won't do to say that, oh, I have this habit, oh, I have this smoking habit, I can't give it up. Then there is no question. It requires a counter habit not to smoke, to give up smoking. So also with all other things that have become automatic with us, they have become part of our nervous system. So now, if they have become part of our nervous system and we do it habitually, then we have to undo it habitually. So that is why so much of sadhana is required. Why do people do sadhana? It says if somebody tells us the goal of life, that is what happens when we academically listen to talks on the YouTube, internet, and all those things. We get a feeling that we have understood everything. But just understanding won't help. The understanding should lead to removal of those old habits. I know what is wrong, but do I know how to stop doing it? If Duryodhana had known what is dharma, he knew what is dharma, but if he had known how not to do adharma, then his life would not have become miserable. And that is his problem, which expresses to Krishna. He says, Krishna, I know what is wrong, what is right, what is dharma, what is adharma, but I can't, I am helpless. So that is the force of habit, the samskaras. So he says, if we want to have the right knowledge, then we have to make a habit of giving up wrong knowledge. If we want to be free from the habit of smoking, we have to constantly refrain from smoking, create a counter habit by not smoking every time we see a cigarette. Similarly, with food, we are addicted to certain foods which doctors say are harmful for you. So since we have made it a habit, we succumb to that. But if we make a counter habit, every time I feel like eating, I just tell my mind, don't eat. So that is one more habit we add, one more positive habit we add to a lot of negative habits. When the balance is almost equal, then progress starts. So very often people say we have been doing japa, we have been going to church, temple, so for so many years, nothing is happening. We are the same people. What we were 20 years ago, there has been hardly any change because there are so many bad habits that we perhaps someone needs more sadhana to counter the bad habits. So we say he has been born with a very bad past or bad samskaras. He may not have done anything bad in this life. But according to Hinduism, it's the cumulative effect of so many lives which even you don't know. The Karana Sharira, all this is recorded. We do not know. It's only when we do sadhana, we understand that it is so difficult to make a little progress in spiritual life. Whereas for some people who are born with good samskaras of the past, not of this present life, our present life is a very short period. You can't judge a person by his present life. There are so many lives. Otherwise, how could Valmiki have become a great saint? He was a robber. He has killed so many people. How can he suddenly transform? How can Tulsidas change from a very worldly person to a saint? The only explanation is that those samskaras were there. Some evil samskaras made them do some evil actions, bad actions, worldly actions. But the moment they understood, or the moment they started forming the right habits, because they did not have a backlog of lot of bad habits, they could easily convert themselves, transform themselves into saints. So this effort to counteract the old worldly habits by means such as prayer, by japa, by reading of books. These are all different ways we use, a sadhaka is supposed to use. That is why it is also known as upasana. Upasana means sitting near. Sitting near whom? Sitting near Brahman, sitting near God. Now we are sitting near Prakriti. And that is why there is so much of difficulty in our life. But upasana enables you to sit near God, at least when you are doing upasana or sadhana or sadhaka. When one is a sadhaka, for the time being, at least he is creating counter habits, trying to counter all the bad habits of so many lives. If he is lucky, if he has less backlog, then he makes quick progress. That's why we can't judge a person. He may be doing, you may say that he's doing for years and years together, nothing has happened. Holy Mother said, no, so many things are happening. He would have taken so many births, but he is exhausting his own karma. Many things are happening. They may not be apparent. He may not show the fruits of his sadhana, fruits of his upasana in this life. Maybe he will experience the truth just before he dies. We do not know, because all depends on our past karma. So Swamiji says in his Karma Yoga, everything that we are is because of habit. And we don't have to be pessimistic or negative about it. If everything is a result of habit, then good habits can counter bad habits. So we still have hope. So sadhana, the urgency of doing sadhana or creating positive samskaras is to see that the bad effects, we do not know. Many of the things are not known to us. They are in our subconscious mind. Only when you do sadhana, these things come to the surface. So the effort, knowingly or unknowingly, anybody who is praying, who is doing sadhana, or who is considered to be a sadhaka in the real sense of the term, not just following religion by way of doing some ritual or some practice just to satisfy his worldly needs. That doesn't deserve the name of sadhana. It is just a refined materialism, as Swamiji used to say, sanctified materialism. That we want wealth, we want health, we want many things. And we go to God because physically it's not possible for us to get. So we somehow convince our mind and imagine that going to this temple, this Shani, this Dasha, that Dasha. If we remove, then nature will be gracious and we'll get our wealth. So most of the people, for them, religion means having a better quality of life, which unfortunately doesn't happen so easily. People just imagine that if we do these things, we will be better off. But then that is not the goal of sadhana. Real sadhakas or spiritual aspirants, they have nothing to do with the quality of life. They just want their urgent need is to counter the known and unknown samskaras, the old habits of several centuries, several lives, which we ourselves don't know. They are hidden in our subconscious mind. So sadhana, the japa, the mantra, the different practices that we do are just to remove or nullify the effect of our bad karma and be at peace. So we are running short of time. If there are some questions which you can ask, there are some questions in the chat. You can, I will answer. Otherwise, we have 3 minutes. In the chat, just see if somebody has typed something.
Yeah, there is one question.
Yeah, you read.
The Gospel M.
Hmm.
The Gospel M relates how Thakur tells, as if refuting the law of karma.
Okay.
There is chaos in Maya.
There is
chaos in
chaos in Maya. Okay.
Seems confusing.
Hmm.
If we are at mercy at the corpus of self, with mother praying, how can we reconcile her nature with cause and effect to create good samskaras through our action, including sadhana?
Just repeat the second part.
Yeah. If we are at mercy at the caprice of the self-willed mother playing, how can we reconcile her nature with cause and effect?
Okay. So the question, there is a question in the chat box where the question asked is, if it is all the play of the Divine Mother, as Sri Ramakrishna very often mentions in the Gospel, then if we are at the mercy of Mother's play, then how can we change? No amount of sadhana. Now we have to remember, from the ultimate point of view, it may be play of Mother. But why don't we consider that it is only by the will of Mother, by the sweet will of Mother, that we do sadhana. It's she who gives us inspiration, she who gives us strength. Don't look at the negative side. Maybe she deludes us. But the same Mother, as Sri Ramakrishna also mentions, there may be chaos. Chaos is for people who don't really try to understand who my mother is. So there are so many songs in Bengali, Shama Ma ki amar kalo le. What is kalo re? What is kalo? Why she is dark? What does dark signify? We never ask questions. We just follow religion and maybe sing these songs to learn some music, and it is so superficial. We don't go deep. But if you see all these great songs in the gospel, Ram Prasad or anybody, they just don't superficially discuss. They want to know the nature of Mother. So as the question, one who has asked the question, it's not just that Mother, it's the sweet will of Mother to bind people. That is avidya maya, but she is the one who through vidya maya removes that ignorance. So Mother has a dual role. You should remember that. It may be chaos, we may be helpless, we may seem to look helpless. But Sri Ramakrishna says, if you depend on the mother, if you depend on the positive side, the Vidyamaya aspect, then you will find that she comes to our rescue, and with the same bondage, I mean, with the same, like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if there is a thorn in the foot, you take another thorn and remove that thorn and then throw away both. That is how Prakriti acts. If you see Patanjali's yoga, she says Prakriti is like a mother. She takes you through all the experiences and finally frees you. She doesn't want the child to be always bound. So if you have this conception very clear, then this problem will not arise. The negative way of looking at things, that we are helpless, what can we do? So let us just surrender to the so-called will of mother and then do as we like. This struggle, this sadhana is not for us, because anyway mother is going to do. That's a pessimistic attitude. So people are pessimistic in spiritual life. People can be optimists in spiritual life. So optimists will say that it is my mother and she knows that I am suffering. So I want her to get rid of suffering. I want her to remove all my bad habits. So the aspect of mother as Vidya Maya is a positive force to remove our ignorance, to undo all the old samskaras. So we should not look at some quotes. Maybe Thakur has said there is chaos going on. For the ignorant people, yes, it looks like a chaos. For the same Sri Ramakrishna, in the initial stages, he was confused. He said, Mother, are you real? Do you really breathe? Everybody says they had a vision. I didn't have. He even went to the extent of cutting his throat, killing himself. He says, what is this? Because I am an ignorant person, you are not showing yourself. Are you true? Am I wasting my time by calling out your name or repeating your name, doing sadhana? So if we see the positive side, it is the same mother who gives us, who creates the chaos, helps us to come out of chaos and be one with the Supreme. Okay. So we shall conclude. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.